Hello, good afternoon, morning, greetings, and welcome to another weekly Outlook video. In this video, I'll be doing things a little bit different. I'll be in real time going through how I actually start my weekly analysis and break down the charts in real time with you guys. I know I'm not live right now on YouTube for questions to be asked, but I'll be breaking down how I actually do my weekly analysis videos and come to what I'm looking for in the coming week. So the first thing I do is to pay attention to the economic calendar. This allows me to see what currencies or pairs I'll be paying attention in the week. So let's go to the economic calendar now. So the first thing I'm seeing is that we have USD news every single day of the week. So on Monday, the 3rd of June, we have USD red folder news events, PMI numbers coming out there, the manufacturing and the services, I guess. I don't know when the services are, but I know it's usually close to each other. But we have the PMI numbers coming out there during the New York session. And then on Tuesday, we have the jobs openings, another red folder. Wednesday, we have non-farm employment change and PMI as well, for services. Then on Thursday we have another USD news there, unemployment claims, and then of course on Friday we have NFP, which is now called, it's no longer called NFP actually, because before it used to be non-farm payroll, now it's non-farm employment change, so I guess you could say NFEC. But people don't call it that. So the entire week we have news on the US dollar. That already tells me that the US dollar should at least have some sort of movement this week, because if you check the US dollar chart, we've been stuck on a tight range the entire week, and I've been looking for a breakout of that range, but we've been consolidating for the last 2 weeks. So basically, if you check now on Twitter, if you check all around, for those that are day trading and those that are swing trading, you would find that their bias has kept on changing every day, every week. So I'm going to still stay on the sidelines and wait for NFP week to pan out. So I'm probably not going to touch anything to do with the dollar. But before I get to that point, we will go through the charts in a moment and see how things look technically speaking. So the first thing that we are going to look at is the dollar crosses, and starting off with the DXY. On the dollar index, we have the monthly charts. For those that know, I typically pay attention to the 3 months, monthly, weekly, then daily, going down time frames. So the monthly chart, we see that last month I was looking for bullish price action because we had violated this fair value gap here, the CB or the BPR, which was supposed to support lower prices but failed to do so when we closed above it right here in this candle on the from April. We closed above it, so when price came down to it, I was expecting it to be used as some sort of support for higher prices, and right now we technically are still respecting that. We haven't closed back below this monthly fair value gap, so we're technically still looking for higher prices. I just don't know how it's going to deliver that. I don't know if we are going to sweep the previous month's low, because if you notice here, we have April's range. The high was never swept and the low was never swept, so we had an inside bar last month in the month of April, so I mean the month of May. So we could see price come to sweep the previous month's low. So we're going to open up a new candle. We're probably going to sweep the lows before continuing higher. That's a likelihood, that's a possibility, but I'm open for anything. When we go down a time frame now to the weekly chart, let's see what we have. We see, if you've been following me for some time, you would know that I was paying attention to this up close candle before they pushed down as a mitigation block of some sort. It was aligned somewhat perfectly with the fair value gap here, which is a BC, in this case, a buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency. So when price came down to it, I was looking for a possible swing low to form so we can see a continuation higher, but we see price kept respecting it. The bodies of these candles kept respecting it week after week until this point here. We decided to displace lower and closed below it, and now price has been hitting that same mitigation block as resistance, and that's why I was saying that there is a chance that we could go for the sell side liquidity there and there, coming back into this fair value gap that we respected once in the past. So I would not be surprised if price decides to go for the sell side liquidity first before pushing higher, like so, or price could just push higher from here and everyone looking for lower prices just gets wrecked. So that's a possibility, and I'm open for both of those things. So that's my main reason of not wanting to trade the dollar this week. When we go down to the daily time frame, I was paying attention to this CB since I'm ultimately bullish on the dollar. Since I actually wanted to see higher prices on the dollar, I wanted to see if we could disrespect this fair value gap that's a sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency, right? And price traded higher, finally closed above it right here. But then we immediately traded back into it and closed below it. Wicked out, came back again, closed above it, came back in, closed inside of it. Right now we are still trading inside of it. Well, technically speaking, we've closed outside of it, but excluding the tiny body outside of it, this could be the manipulation that was needed, and price could just literally keep going higher from here, giving us a proper shift in structure to continue higher. So in other words, if I want to trade the dollar, I would not only be waiting for a displacement out of this imbalance, this highlighted zone, but I would like to see a fair value gap created. So if we are going to displace lower, the only thing that would make me participate in sells is if we create another CB, a daily CB somewhere here that we could trade back into to continue selling off. That's the only thing that would make me take sells. If we are going to be bullish as I'm expecting us to be, I would not participate until or unless we create a CB, a BC, and then a continuation higher. So we could see some sort of rejection from this future mitigation block, if you want to call it that. If price decides to displace higher, we could see a fair value gap created here with the block and could continue higher. So I'm not going to participate in the dollar until or unless we create a daily fair value gap in either direction, but I'm supporting higher prices. So that's my view on the dollar index. Now we go back to since it's a 50-50 area right now, I would have been breaking down the New Zealand dollar, GBPUSD, Euro USD, and yeah, basically the majors, all the dollar crosses. But I'm not doing so right now because we are more or less in a 50-50 area. Yes, again, as I already told you, that I'm looking for possible higher prices on the dollar. When we see GBPUSD here, we are rejecting away from this fair value gap here on the daily time frame. A daily chart would need an hourly confirmation. On the hourly chart, this is where we are sitting. We have an SMT with euro dollar. Let's split the screen. You would notice that here on the looking down there, we can see that's the high created on the London session of last week, 29th of May, 3 a.m. The same high is compared that side. This high here was not on the same time though, because this high was made at 8 a.m. So, but 8 a.m. is right there. That's the candle for 8 a.m. This bullish candle. So technically this should be right here for comparison's sake. But I noticed that this was basically another SMT. I decided to take the whole day. So the high of day on Friday was basically here, and the high of day on Friday is basically there. We have another SMT in a sense that this high on GBPUSD was taken by the 10 a.m. high, while on euro it wasn't. So we have that sort of tiny SMT going on there, something that looks like this. So I know it's a steep one, but it's basically an SMT. Previous candle was swept here, while this one did not get a sweep in the previous candle. So yeah, that's also another SMT besides the daily one, the one that I would look at per day, because here we could just look at the high of day on Wednesday, here we could look at the high of day on Friday, and that could just be the SMT you look at. That's actually much favorable than looking at each candle, unless you're looking on a high time frame. So we already got this SMT, and we just rejected off of a daily gap on GBP. Now we have retraced back into this order block on the hourly chart. So we could just see a Monday open up and just continue lower from here into the daily fair value gap, or those relative equal lows. The daily fair value gap is this one that we highlighted here. So we could go from this internal range liquidity back to the external range liquidity, which are these lows, then internal again, and probably from this internal back up. Who knows? Or we could just continue going lower from there. But I'm favoring higher prices on the dollar. I already mentioned what would make me want to take higher dollar by the creation of the fair value gap, or lower dollar by the creation of the CB, which is the bearish fair value gap. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at on the dollar measures. Euro dollar, we don't have much going on. We've already dissected it. I'm not going to worry too much about the major pairs until DXY gives me what I'm looking for. Of course, anybody else out there can look at the charts and see something that they're looking for form, but for me, there's nothing I'm looking for at the moment that has formed so far, and because of that, I'm going to rather not pay attention to the dollar index. So let's go back to the economic calendar and see what other opportunities we might have. Since I'm using Forex Factory, I'm going to filter the charts, the reports it gives me. I'm still going to only pay attention to these red folder, orange folder, and the holidays there, which is just the non-economic news events. But this time I'm going to untick the dollar because I don't want to see anything to do with the dollar. So Sunday today, we have a bank holiday on the NZD, on the New Zealand dollar, but I'm not going to worry myself too much about that because I don't see much until we go in the charts. On Monday, we don't have any news at all for non USD pairs. On Tuesday, we do have two red folder news events on Swiss and AUD. So that on its own could actually be a nice pair to trade, because I see that on two different times. This is during the London session, and this is during the Asia session later that day. So these two, especially a high impact news like CPI, could actually be a nice pair to trade, AUD Swiss. But I'm going to now scan through my Swiss pairs and AUD pairs. Then we'll see if we have an opportunity clean enough that we could potentially capitalize on. So we go back to our trading view, then start off with the AUD pairs. As you know, my high time frame is always monthly, weekly, daily for intra-week trades, of course. Besides that, I go to the 3-month chart, but for intra-week trades, it's monthly, weekly, then daily. So let's start off with the monthly chart. What do we see? On the monthly chart, we got a closure above this high. So this candle could be used as a potential order block of some sort. Price could trade down into it, use it as support for higher prices. That's all I see so far, just looking at the higher time frame. Of course, we don't have a fair value gap here. That would have been better, because if we had a monthly fair value gap, we could look for the low of a new month to be formed here, then a possible continuation higher. But that's AUD, so on the weekly, I don't see much. I see that we served these relative equal highs, but we also closed above them, and I can't say this is an untapped fair value gap, because if you notice, we've already tapped into it there, so I can't say external back to internal range liquidity. So that's a bit of a 50-50 area for me. So because of that, I'm not going to be touching this time frame. Then we go down finally to the daily, and I see that we are currently in a weird sort of consolidation, so I'm not going to touch this as well. So yeah, nothing on the on AUD CAD we move on to AUD Swiss, which is the one that I mentioned that we could get a nice trade opportunity on the same day. Starting off with the monthly time frame. Well, for me, I see a relatively clear draw on liquidity. The monthly candle is closed, so this is a closure, right? The drawn liquidity I'm seeing here is this monthly fair value gap as a potential swing trade opportunity to get to. But one thing that I'm looking at already here, let's delete this line because I'm not sure what it is. One thing I'm looking at already here is the fact that we have a strong rejection at the highs there. So whatever liquidity that we took on a lower time frame, we've rejected so much that we almost came back to the high of the previous month. The second thing that I'm paying attention to here is the fact that we have this fair value gap. I know it's small, but it's a monthly time frame, so it's probably going to be bigger on a lower time frame. So already this is making me think of something that looks like this. We have external range liquidity back to internal, and then potentially when price comes into this monthly time frame, we could see a trade up back into external range liquidity, which is the high of the previous month, and obviously the fair value gap that we have up there. So that is something to pay attention to. If this is an idea that we have on a high time frame, let's see if the lower time frames align with this. On the weekly, we have currently disrespected this weekly fair value gap. So this weekly fair value gap was supposed to support higher prices because it's a BC, but it didn't. It failed to do so, and because of that, it could now possibly be used as resistance for lower prices. So CPI could quickly spike up in there, making the high of the week, and then possibly a continuation all the way to the monthly fair value gap. Let's set an alert at that monthly gap actually. So we are looking for a possible tap back into this weekly gap to gap. Daily, what do we have? A daily, we already have a rejection away from the weekly fair value gap. So we could see price trading up into a premium. If you notice, we have this tiny fair value gap here on the daily chart. Let's say Monday decides to consolidate, so we don't take the previous day's low. So let's say we get something like this, right? A consolidation. When Tuesday comes, we might trade up and fill up this fair value gap or even the premium side, because notice where the 50% of this range is, the previous swing high to the previous swing low. Well, it's not even a swing low yet until a candle prints here. But let's assume Monday's candle does not take Friday's low, then it becomes a swing low. So we could see CPI manipulate high into this fair value gap or the premium one all the way up there, then a continuation lower this week, creating a market maker sell model. So this could be something we look for going into next week. Monday accumulation, Tuesday manipulation during CPI, then continuation lower throughout the week, and hopefully the AUD news later that night, later during the Asia session, would be the one to take us to continue taking us lower. So this is all I see on AUD. I don't usually go lower than the daily when I'm doing a weekly analysis, but if I do have to, we could see price not even bother. Let's delete this. We could see price not even bother going up to that premium, and we could just use this fair value gap here from the 4 hour to continue lower to complete this market maker sell model. Yeah, there's a very huge likelihood of that. The reason being how we rejected from the weekly gap there, away from the weekly gap. We disrespected it, but we rejected perfectly away from it, and then immediately shut down away from it. So this swing high might be very important for next week. We might not even trade above this swing high. So because of that, I'll also set another alert here. to possibly try and sell AUD Swiss, and we have relative equal lows right there as the target. So yeah, this could be a nice selling opportunity to take with a stop loss at the swing high and the take profit at the relative equal lows for a 1-2 risk reward. So this could be a potential sell to take going into next week, early next week actually. So CPI could be the one to just run lower quickly without even looking twice. Then after CPI, we could see a reversal back up again to the higher time frame gap that we mentioned. I think that's a monthly gap up there. So yeah, that's what I see on AUD Swiss, and because of that, I'm going to actually highlight this as one of the pairs that I'll be paying attention to next week. AUD NZD is the next one because we're still looking at AUD pairs. I don't typically trade the AUD NZD because it's just a strength indicator. It shows me which one, because the typical nature of it is a consolidative nature. Like, I mean, you can see because they have closely related interest rates, just like Euro GBP there, the same thing with Euro GBP. So because of that, I don't trade them, but I use it to see which one is stronger and which one is weaker to pair with the sister, with the other pair, the sister pair that I would use for SMT. So on the monthly time frame, it already looks like this fair value gap might be respected for higher prices. So we might see a sweep of the previous month's low and then a continuation higher. So AUD might be the stronger pair this month if this fair value gap is going to hold. AUD might be the stronger one this month, and that's going to work well with our AUD Swiss because we could see price trade down into the gap as I mentioned. Then the rest of the month could be a nice buying opportunity. So we could come down into this gap, creating the low of the week during CPI and possibly the low of the month as well, so that the rest of the month we could just continue buying until this gap. So if AUD NZD is going to really respect this gap, then that's going to support our idea on AUD Swiss. So that's just something to keep an eye out on. AUD USD is a dollar pair, so I'm not going to bother with this. AUD JPY, we are very clearly making new highs there, so I don't think it is the all-time high. I think, oh no, not yet, there's still those highs there. 107.74. So yeah, we've just been buying this. I think I'm currently in a position with AJ. Yeah, actually I am currently in a position with AJ and GJ. So we have internal range liquidity to external range liquidity. So I think because of JPY in this pair, we might just reach that external range liquidity before the CPI news even comes out on Tuesday, I think. On the daily chart, actually let me put back the arrow because I gave this sort of signal on my group on Telegram. But yeah, on the daily chart we swept liquidity down there, immediately rejected away from it, but we tapped into a weekly fair value gap. So a weekly fair value gap needed me to confirm the idea on a 4-hour chart. On a 4-hour chart, I saw that we inverted this fair value gap here. So when Asia came along and we created the low, I remember this was during Asia session, I jumped in on this buy and I did the same on GBP JPY. But we finally got the displacement here, our market structure shift with the closure above the swing high there. So this is a market structure shift. So this should be the one you take actually. When we came down into this fair value gap on the 4-hour, that's your trade idea to be buying AJ. You could probably set your stop loss at the low of this candle, targeting basically 1-to-1 because the target is right here. So yeah, this would have been a nice clean 1-to-1 trade, high probability setups. But if you wanted it to be a higher risk reward, then on the 1-hour, you'd notice where I pointed out the low forming from the mitigation block there. In a market makers buy model, all up close candles that were supporting lower prices before would now be supporting higher prices when they get returned back into. So what I did was to measure the range that we created from the high there to the last swing low there. I saw the 50% was right there. The only thing below the 50% was 100% fill of this gap and the mitigation block there. So that's why I was expecting higher prices from there. And now we have created a 1 hour FVG, a 1 hour gap. So we could see price just return down back into this fair value gap this night on Sunday when the markets open, and we could see price just continue higher from there to complete the market maker buy model. So this is something I'm looking for on Sunday going into Monday. But yeah, AUD CPI is on Tuesday, so if we don't get this completed by Monday before CPI, I'm probably going to stay out of this, because I don't want to be the one trying to get close to this, especially when I'm looking for lower prices on AUD Swiss. You should remember that I'm looking for AUD Swiss pushing lower off of the 4 hour gap right there, continuing lower. So if I'm looking for lower prices on AUD Swiss, I should not be looking for higher prices on AUD JPY. It doesn't, it's contradictory. So yeah, on here I'm hoping that the yen pushes out higher, and then on Tuesday AUD takes over with the weakness that it's possibly gonna get from this fair value gap going lower. Yeah, I see it's already 26 minutes on the recording, but I'm going to try and just speed run the rest of this, because this is literally how I break down the charts every single weekend on what I'm looking for. CAD Swiss. Actually, before we get to CAD Swiss and the other ones, let me finish all the AUD pairs. Euro AUD, since I'm looking for lower prices on AUD Swiss, I should be looking for higher prices on Euro AUD, unless the technicals don't align. On AUD, on Euro AUD, I don't see anything here on the monthly. We could possibly go for this sell side liquidity, but I still don't see any fair value gap to work with on the weekly. The only thing I do see is this bearish order block. So we came back to the opening price of this order block and continue pushing lower, but we've been consolidating since then, so nothing clean here. Let me check the in between time frames. Yeah, nothing clean until the daily. On the daily chart we had this BPR, the inversion. I was expecting price to push lower. It did reject off of it, and I was in this trade actually, but we can see price just kept on meandering for too long. We kept on trading higher, then rejecting lower, trading higher, then rejecting lower. Ultimately, I still see sell side liquidity being a possibility, but I don't like the way it's been playing around here. On the hourly, yeah, we can see it's just been one huge choppy mess. I was literally in this trade up there. Price rejected and pushed as low as this. When price started clearing these new lows and rejecting away from it, I think I closed my trade somewhere here. So I am no longer in this trade, even though I still believe we might get lower prices. So that's also already contradictory on my AUD Swiss idea on wanting higher lower prices on AUD Swiss. So here's Euro AUD. You should expect higher prices, but I don't know, it's a 50-50 thing, and you could find that the Swiss in AUD Swiss might be the one to take over rather than the AUD. So anything can happen, but yeah, Euro AUD, possible lower prices targeting those lows, and then of course the external range liquidity all the way down there. Let's see if we have anything on GA. I'm looking for possible higher prices. So yeah, now it's a Euro AUD and GBPUSD are sitting at a 50-50 area for me, so I'd rather just not trade it, because on the daily time frame we can see we have this fair value gap that we've swept liquidity once before, we've swept it again, and we are still respecting the top portion of the fair value gap. We didn't even close below the consequent encroachment of this fair value gap. So this daily chart makes me go down to the hourly time frame for confirmation. On the hourly time frame, we have not closed above a swing high yet, but we've now created multiple swing highs. We have this swing high right there, right? You can see that's a swing high. So if price closes above this, that could be a potential setup to be buying GBPUSD to those relative equal highs up there and the external liquidity up there. So we could see something that looks like this: a closure, fair value gap retest, and continuation. So that's what I'm looking for on GBPUSD, but I don't know if we'll get that. Just paying attention to it. Let's see if there's any other AUD pair. I've already looked at AUD and ZD, so yeah. So that's all the AUD pair that I have. And the only one that I found interesting was AUD Swiss. And then as for GA, I'll look to see if we'll close above this high, and a possible continuation closing above this high as well. I would like to see a swing high broken by a fair value gap, then I'll use that to continue buying this up. When we go back to the economic calendar, we can see that that's basically Tuesday, where we have AUD news. I actually forgot that we were supposed to be looking at the Swiss. So let's quickly go back to the Swiss pairs. The Swiss fortunately isn't too much. I've already looked at AUD Swiss for you guys, and then CAD Swiss. Let's go to the monthly time frame. On the monthly chart, we have this lower fair value gap. I don't know if we'll get there if we'll go back to that monthly fair value gap, but right now we seem to be having bullish price action. We could see price trade all the way back down to this fair value gap. Let's make it clearer. We could see price come back to this fair value gap before continuation higher. That would be extreme. That would be an extreme discount that I would even consider buying this up as well for a swing idea to those relative equal highs up there. So CAD Swiss could possibly see those lows, and on the weekly, yeah, those relative equal highs are attractive, but we would like to see a proper discount. We did see price reject here, creating a nice significant low, bouncing off of this fair value gap, but I'll be paying attention to this. Right now we're still in a consolidation, and this is a weekly chart, so for a few weeks now from March we've been consolidating. I would like to see if price can take this low. If that happens, that would be nice, because we could definitely see price coming down to the monthly gap before continuing higher. On the daily, let's see if we have anything. Daily, we have the same sign. Actually, I think all Swiss pair will have this same sign of a rejection here away from a possible fair value gap. So we might not even trade to this fair value gap, similar to AUD Swiss that we just pointed out now. We might not even trade to that fair value gap up there, and we could see a continuation lower. I'm guessing the 4 hour is going to look similar. Yeah, we see price rejecting from a fair value gap, but we haven't created a new fair value gap here. That's the difference with CAD Swiss and AUD Swiss. And then Euro Swiss, I might actually like this as well. On Euro Swiss, we have the high up there, as I mentioned. I mean, as we saw on CAD Swiss as well. On the weekly time frame, this is looking like a weekly internal range liquidity to external range liquidity, but we could get one of those situations where price takes out this weekly low before continuing higher. So we could trade away from it outside of this gap, outside of the BC, just like we did here, but we might not close away from it. So price may come down, then continue higher, which would be fine with me, because it also supports our AUD Swiss idea, where we want it to trade down into the gap, then ultimately a swing idea to the monthly fair value gap. So I'm watching out for this weekly low as a possible draw on liquidity. On the daily time frame, we also see the sharp rejection. This sharp rejection away from the move higher does not signify to me higher prices. It doesn't give me the confidence to be buying it now, at least till a significant low is swept. So this low will be on my crosshairs going into next week. On the 4-hour, yeah, we have exactly the same thing. We have a market maker sell model, a rejection from the 50% fair value gap on the 4-hour chart, and now we've created a new one right now over here. That price could come back into, then push lower into this sell side liquidity. So it'll be an idea that looks something like this, there, and there. So surprisingly, this week actually seems very nice for Swiss crosses. Yeah, I'm going to definitely be paying attention to this as also. You would have waited for this swing low to be violated, or even this one. Wait for price to close below any of these two swing lows before looking for lower prices or continuation. That's what I'm looking for on Euro Swiss. GBP Swiss, relatively the same. Actually, we have an SMT here already that I'm spotting with Euro Swiss. I'm not even going to bother going on a higher time frame. It's more or less the same thing. I say it's an SMT because GBP Swiss failed to trade into this gap while Euro Swiss did not fail. It actually traded into it. So now this becomes an internal SMT divergence. I say internal, but technically on a lower time frame, it's not internal. It's just two swing highs on a lower time frame. So yeah, I'm looking for lower prices on Swiss crosses earlier on in the week. We might see GBP Swiss trade down into this down close candle before continuing higher to the external range liquidity. So something to pay attention to. Definitely something to pay attention to. Let's see what this one looks also on the 4-hour. The problem is that we are currently in a weekly fair value gap on almost all of them. So that's something to also watch out for, that we could reject away anytime within this weekly fair value gap on all of these Swiss pairs. Okay, this one isn't yet, but yeah, we could come down again here, then continue higher. Now that we have looked at the Swiss and AUD news, I know we probably would have another AUD news at some point in the week. Actually, we don't have in this example, but yeah, even if we did, I would not be looking at them anymore, just because I've panned through the technical side of most AUD pairs along with the Swiss as well. So I would remove AUD and I would remove Swiss. I don't look at the yen, the Chinese yen already, so I wouldn't be paying attention to that either. And let's apply the filter to see what's left. So yeah, we see here that we now have the CAD, GBP. Well, we don't have GBP red folder, we only have the orange folder. So we have the CAD, we have the euro left, CAD and euro left. So let's pan through CAD and euro pairs now. Let's see, where do we begin? I think with CAD, especially with CAD being the first, I like to start off with the CAD index, or the CAD bracket, if you want to call it that, because some people call it, no, I mean CAD basket. Some people call it CAD basket. So yeah, no, there's none. I don't see much on the weekly, on the monthly. On the weekly, I do see us rejecting currently away from the fair value gap right there. I know it's barely visible, but we are rejecting away from that fair value gap. We have swept liquidities at the high, so I'm seeing these lows being suspect, and that's outside liquidity. Let's see if we have anything on the daily time frame. On the daily time frame, order flow seems to be bearish so far. We have not closed above its previous swing high yet. So right now, yes, the previous day was incredibly bullish, but We haven't closed above, we've taken that low. We haven't closed above, let's say, this high right here, that swing high. So we could take liquidity, sweep that high, then continue lower. So yeah, if my directional bias for this week is lower CAD prices, so we could see CAD lose strength, which means CAD Swiss, CAD JPY, I'll be looking for lower prices. Well, technically. And then yeah, CAD Swiss, we've already looked at it because of the Swiss, and we are looking for lower prices, so it matches with our directional bias. CAD JPY might be contradictory because I'm looking for higher prices on the yen crosses because of the weakness the yen has been having, and you can see all yen pairs are going to look something like this. So this might be a struggle to push lower because that buy side liquidity is my drawn liquidity for CAD JPY. But yeah, I'm looking for higher prices on CAD JPY. I'm not bearish here. So this is something to pay attention to. We might even create a daily fair value gap here somewhere, and then we could get an internal range liquidity back to external up there. So let's set the alert, and I would like to see after Monday has traded what Tuesday looks like. So I'm going to set a vertical line alert there as well. The reason I'm doing that is because we might get some sort of fair value gap form, and I would look for internal back to external using the hourly chart for confirmation, because this would be a daily PDRA, especially if it aligns with this down close candle. That would be nice. Yeah, this would be a nice setup to take. But you see, it's a bit contradictory with my CAD directional bias, but even so, I would take it because of the yen. Yeah, the exact same idea with the yen. So something to look out for. Now we go on to other CAD crosses. Let's start with AUD CAD. We've already looked at it. We said it was choppy, so we're not going to pay attention to it. Euro CAD. Let's see what we have on Euro CAD. Monthly chart. We are rejecting away from the highs, probably the consequent encroachment of this week. Let's see. Okay, we didn't even get there. On the weekly time frame, what do we have? We don't have any fair value gaps. Let me delete this and that. Remove that line. Weekly, I don't see anything clear. Daily, I don't see anything clear. I wonder what this is. It's probably on an hourly chart. Oh, it's this area on the 4 hour. Yeah, we could see lower prices on Euro CAD, but I'm supporting higher higher Euro CAD because of the lower CAD prices here. I don't know how long this is going to support, act as a resistance. It's engineering liquidity here, so we might just see price wipe it. In other words, Euro CAD is not really something I'm focused on. I'd rather pay attention to CAD JPY that we just looked at now. GBP CAD, also messy. I saw this last week. It was my only trade directional bias or idea for last week, an OTE entry from the order block. Traded now into the daily fair value gap. The daily fair value gap is right there, but it's been disrespected. Let's clear up all this mess. Yeah, we have now disrespected this gap as expected. I wanted to see if we could trade down there as the final target, because I think it was the 50% of the range in the previous week. But yeah, I'm no longer interested in this. On the weekly time frame, we have created a fair value gap here though. A fair value gap here, but I would measure the range from the previous swing low on the weekly chart to the previous swing high, and I'm seeing the 50% is all the way down here by this order block. So we could see price trade down into it and continue higher. So GBP CAD might see lower prices, especially going into this weekly fair value gap at the very least. So we might trade into this weekly gap. I don't know what we're going to do there, if we're going to reject higher or continue lower, but this would be my draw on liquidity, and you could possibly capitalize on it on something like the 15 minutes time frame. So we could see a continuation lower from here, because that's the fair value gap on the weekly. So yeah, nothing that interests me enough to put my money in there. NZD from the weekly time frame, solid bullish candle. That high is suspect. Weekly time frame, we still have this fair value gap. We didn't get that last week. I was hoping for it last week. We didn't get it, so I'll still pay attention to it. I still have my alert set on it in case we do get internal range liquidity and swing it all the way to the external relative equal highs. So I'll still be paying attention to this. I have alerts set on both sides. I'm not going to touch either one until my alerts get triggered. So yeah. And then finally, USD CAD. We might see lower prices to these relative equal lows, but I was looking for higher prices on the CAD for so long, so I'm not sure what to do with this. I would rather just stay out and not touch it, because I didn't want to touch the dollar crosses anyway. Finally, as we round up, I'll be checking out the euro pairs. Let's see what euro GBP looks like. Let's go to the weekly time frame. Okay, euro GBP has been bearish, swept the lows and rejecting away from those lows. Now we might see lower prices, but first we might come up to this weekly fair value gap before continuing lower. So earlier on in the week, I'm expecting euro to be stronger than the pound, then GBP takes over with the strength from there after we reject from this fair value gap. I am looking at euro GBP because I would like to see whether or not euro is stronger or weaker right now, and I think euro is weaker, but short term we might retrace back into that gap before continuing lower. Yeah, it's the same thing on the daily. We are still incredibly bearish, but maybe watch out for the 50% of the range that we've created, like so. So price may come up here, sweep this high, which is not the previous week high, but we could sweep the previous week high, which is here, Monday's high. We could get all the way there. Then I expect GBP's strength to take over, so euro GBP will be start falling off again from there. Well, that's my expectation, so we'll see how price plays out. I've already looked at the euro AUD because of the AUD. I've looked at the euro CAD because of CAD. I've looked at euro Swiss because of the Swiss news. I've looked at euro NZD. I don't think I have actually. I've not looked at euro NZD here live. Yeah, but I'm looking for this idea. I was looking for weekly internal range liquidity to external range liquidity, but price has been reluctant on giving that, so I'm still on the sidelines here. I have my alert set up there, but it hasn't given it yet. The reason I was looking at that, because here we have a discounted fair value gap. So yeah, I was looking for this idea from here to there, but now that price is already traded here, I'd rather stay out and not touch this. Yeah, I'd rather stay out and not touch this. I mean, yes, euro has been weak, so it doesn't surprise me that it's got in here already, but I would rather see from here to there. So yeah, right now let's just not look at euro NZD. Euro USD, I said I wasn't gonna look at dollar. Euro JPY, I said I'm bullish on all the yen crosses. The same idea on all of them. We're probably gonna have a fair 1 hour fair value gap. We do right there. We could use that to propel price higher if euro continues gaining strength. If not, then we could sweep this low, coming down to this fair value gap here, then continuing higher. But I'm bullish on euro JPY. So yeah, this is what I'm looking for on euro. I don't believe there's any other euro cross that I've missed out on. So yeah, that's all. That's how I do my weekly analysis. I know this video is probably gonna be 1 hour long. This is the 49th minute. I'm seeing the timer up there. And before I close off, Let's see if we can run over the indices. I'm not going to worry myself with gold and silver right now, but let's take a look at the indices. On the indices, I was extremely bearish, and I still am actually. When we look at a, let's say, 2-hour chart, for example, on Nasdaq, we can see those relative equal lows down there. I'm looking for those lows. I'm looking for that low ultimately, and then the sell side liquidity at April's low. So I'm looking for one huge market maker sell model to be formed. And even though everyone right now is extremely bullish with good reason, because of this rejection, we displaced lower, and it would have been nice if we closed lower, if price remained there, because we would have disrespected the weekly fair value gap. This weekly gap that we traded into. If we closed lower, we would have been below this fair value gap, and that would really hold my bias for shorts, for sells, to take the sell side liquidity down there and the levels that I just outlined. And even though we got this rejection away from this area, because we rejected from the down close candles there, these down close candles, and this fair value gap on a lower time frame, which is, well, that's a weekly chart, so that's a weekly PDRA, so we work with a 4-hour chart. On a lower time frame, we've already confirmed an order block now, because we closed above this previous candle, so this becomes a bullish order block. If price comes back down to it, we should technically now be supporting higher prices, probably to that buy side liquidity up there. The problem is, I don't believe this. I don't believe that we're going to get there. So because of that, I'm going to rather stay out. I'm still bearish on indices, on Nasdaq specifically, but yeah, it's going to be a hard sell. In other words, I would like to see if this main threshold, the main threshold of this down close candle, can be disrespected. By main threshold, I mean like measure the entire candle. The 50% is right there. If price can trade lower than this 50%, then I'm still sticking to my sells. Yeah, right now I'm not buying the buys. I'm not buying the buys. And yeah, that's all I'm looking for on the indices, specifically the Nasdaq. Everything else is not clean enough. We already have an SMT with S&P 500, because we took out this high, Friday's high. We actually took out even Thursday's high as well on S&P 500, while Nasdaq failed to do so. So that's a significant SMT to me, and I'd like to see if it can hold for lower prices. So yeah, right now on Nasdaq, I'm still bearish, and I'm looking for those lows, those relative equal lows, as my low hanging fruit. And I don't think there's anything else I have here to cover, but in a nutshell, that's how I would have done my weekly analysis. That's technically what I do every week of the recording, and this is surprisingly shorter, because I would have spent an entire 2 hours of doing so, then only showing what my top picks are to you guys. But if that was insightful, please don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and let me know if there's anything else you would like me to cover. For now, stay safe. Good luck and good trading.